Ladies and gentlemen, it is happening. About 10 years too late, but it is happening. Washington Post. House Oversight Committee votes to hold Clintons in contempt of Congress. Fox News. House takes steps closer to referring Clintons for criminal charges. The Hill. These Democrats voted to hold the Clintons in contempt. Democrats also voted to hold Bill and Hillary in contempt of Congress. Peter Navarro and also Steve Bannon both served 3, 4, 5-month prison sentences. I believe it was 2 to 4 months prison sentences for each. And so I don't know how the Clintons circumvent or escape or slither through around the reality that a contempt vote, contempt of Congress, based on what Democrats have done or based on the precedent set by Democrats. And hit subscribe to this channel right now, to my super chat. Thank you. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. You want to become a member of the channel? Your membership is greatly appreciated. To read my writing in The Hill, Huffington Post, The Federalist, number of other publications, go to hagoodman.com. I don't understand how the Clintons can circumvent this. Check this out. This is going to be about 10 years. Well, Rome wasn't built in a day, but hit subscribe. Watch this to my super chat. Thank you.
Is now unfavorably reporting the William J. Clinton contempt report as amended. Members will record their votes using the electronic voting system. The clerk will now open the vote on the William J. Clinton contempt report. Have all members been recorded who wish to be? Okay, we're waiting on one more. Has everybody voted now?
Yes.
Okay. Does any member wish to change their vote? The clerk will close the vote and report the vote total.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 34, the nays are 8, with 2 voting present.
Pursuant to this, the ayes have it. Pursuant to this vote, the committee hereby favorably reports and adopts this report, recommending that the House of Representatives find William J. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by this committee. We will move to the report to the full House. Without objection, the motion to consider is laid upon the table.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to House Rule 9, Clause 2.1, I just ask that members have the requisite 2 days to file with the clerk of the committee supplemental, additional, and minority and dissenting views.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Without objection. The question is now unfavorably reporting the Hillary R. Clinton contempt report as amended. Members will record their votes using the electronic voting system. The clerk will now open the vote on the Hillary R. Clinton contempt report. Flag. Have all members been recorded who wish to be recorded? Does any member wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the clerk will close the vote and report the vote total.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 28, the nays are 15, with 1 voting present.
The ayes have it. Pursuant to this vote, the committee hereby favorably reports and adopts this report, recommending that the House of Representatives find Hillary R. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by this committee. We will move the report to the full House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Mr. Chairman.
Taxes.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 28, the nays are 15, with 1 voting present.
The ayes have it. Pursuant to this vote, the committee hereby favorably reports and adopts this report recommending that the House of Representatives find Hillary R. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena.
Then it goes to a floor vote in the House where even some Democrats, we had about, 9 Democrats vote to hold Bill and Hillary Clinton in contempt. So here, it's appropriate that that gentleman he was part of Clinton's administration. Look, $20,000. Jeffrey Epps gave $20,000 to Hillary Clinton. He gave $22,000 to Chuck Schumer. When people say, what's Trump hiding? Trump isn't hiding anything. If there was any shred of criminality, it would have been leaked 10 years ago. It's very likely that wonderful, morally superior Democrats are hiding a lot. 2000 ABC News article. $50,000 to Bill Richardson. Gave $10,000 to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. He gave to Congresswoman Plaskett, according to this, $8,100. Larry Summers, Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary, had to resign. Okay. Plaskett narrowly escaped censure over her Epps texts. She was literally texting him real time. Jeffrey Epps gave $139,000 to Democrats and only $18,000 to Republicans, which those Republicans would be never Trump Republicans. He probably wouldn't like the populist Trump Republicans. Actually, he probably despised them. He hung out with Democrats, and primarily Democrats, and he gave money, $139,000 to Democrats. And he gave $77,000 to John Kerry, Richard Gephardt, and Chris Dodd. Okay? He was a Democratic donor. If Trump was slow or didn't want to release all the files, it's because people like Larry Summers had to resign. And there were a lot of people caught up, like just in pictures with Jeffrey Epps. Okay? House Oversight Committee, CNN, New York Times, The Hill, Fox News, it's all over the place. I get it. Nobody thinks anybody will ever be held accountable. I'm telling you that this 2026 will be the year of indictment. A lot of people who potentially committed crimes and circumvented those crimes will be indicted. Russiagate, a whole bunch of things. 9 Democrats voted to advance a resolution concerning former President Clinton, and 3 Democrats for Hillary Clinton. Okay, so then you have Peter Navarro did serve prison time. You have, Bannon, and then Peter Navarro did serve prison time also. And Bannon served a 4-month sentence in prison. According to CNN, he served a prison sentence. Okay, it went to jail. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. This is huge. This is historic. It goes to a vote in the House next week. Then, once it passes the House, which it will, you even had Democrats voting, it goes to the Department of Justice, and then they level the indictment. I don't know how. I'm telling you, I don't know how they can circumvent this, but let's listen to this. Paul Bartlett to my super chat. Thank you, Paul. Greatly appreciated.
All right, Bill and Hillary Clinton have refused to appear before 2 House Oversight Committee to testify as part of their investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. In an 8-page letter to Chairman Comer, Clinton's lawyers said they, quote, have already provided the limited information they possess about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They called the effort, quote, nothing more than a ploy and attempt to embarrass Trump's political rivals. Chairman Comer spoke to reporters outside the hearing room where Bill Clinton was due to testify earlier today and laid out what is coming next. Take a look.
As a result of Bill Clinton not showing up for his lawful subpoena, which again was voted on it unanimously by the committee in a bipartisan manner, we will move next week in the House Oversight Committee markup to hold former President Clinton in contempt of Congress.
All right, so Chairman Comer joins us now. Is it true that Peter Navarro was held in contempt and he went to prison, and Steve Bannon held in contempt and he went to prison? Did that happen in those cases?
100%. When Democrats subpoenaed Republicans and the Republicans didn't show, they held them in contempt, and the Department of Justice prosecuted them.
And do we have 17 chronicled examples of Jeffrey Epstein visiting Bill Clinton when he was president of our country?
Yes, Sean. When Bill Clinton was president, Jeffrey Epstein went to the White House 17 times, and then post-presidency, Bill Clinton flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane at least 27 times.
If that is true, imagine if the tables were turned. Imagine if Donald Trump had Jeffrey Epps 17 times at the Oval Office, and imagine if Donald Trump flew on Jeffrey Epps' plane 27 times plus. Imagine. And so both Hillary and Bill don't want to testify. Okay. And by the way, I voted for Bill Clinton twice. Okay, in the 90s. Voted for him twice. He was a good president. If you want to just even, Trump is the greatest president of my lifetime, likely of your lifetime, if you're watching this. In terms of, he was a good president in terms of not starting endless wars and other things that I find important. As a human being, when people go after Trump and they say, oh, he's this, he's that, as a human being, why would you be so closely aligned as a donor on a plane, if that's true, going to an island? And we're not even getting to Hillary.
So that shows they were close. Again, no one's accusing Bill Clinton of any wrongdoing. We just have questions. And the Democrats in Congress, they've gone,
Oh, and for the record, there's no evidence that Bill or Hillary Clinton committed a crime. Okay, they will have committed a crime once the DOJ indicts them for refusing a subpoena. You cannot refuse a subpoena. I remember during the Mueller probe, you had MSNBC, a panelist, saying you can't refuse the subpoena. Oh my God, you can't. Well, now the Clintons are, and of course it's completely, the same people who say you have to show up, the same people who said Bannon and Peter Navarro need to be sent to prison are the same people defending the Clintons now.
All full war mode on trying to get people in to talk about Epstein. But when it came to Bill Clinton, initially the Democrats voted for the subpoena and they said, yeah, we want to hear from Bill Clinton too. Today they were a no-show. They didn't even come to the deposition, and they're all running and evading reporters who, quite surprisingly, the mainstream media has been pretty critical that Bill Clinton didn't show up for this subpoena.
And just as a matter of reference, didn't Donald Trump throw Epstein out of his club some 25 years ago because of his behavior with young women that he found inappropriate?
Yes,
if somebody
and
had incriminating information on Donald Trump, would he so publicly in a town like Palm Beach, where social circles, I guess, matter to a lot of people, would he publicly do that if he had incriminating information?
Yeah, look, Donald Trump has answered thousands of questions from the American public and from the media about Epstein. to my knowledge, Bill Clinton hasn't answered any questions. And what he said in that letter, he's provided us his information about his knowledge of Epstein. He didn't provide hardly any information for someone that allowed Epstein to go to the White House 17 times while he was president and then fly on his plane 27 times. So we have questions. If anyone in America is interested in Epstein and getting to the truth about what really happened and who needs to be held accountable and how the government failed the victims, then Bill Clinton is someone that would be a person of interest, whether you're a Republican or Democrat.
Well, I find this so interesting because there are a lot of so-called people that claim to be conservatives, only when it's convenient, in my view, demanding Donald Trump. Joe Biden had access to this information. He never released it. But I'm seeing pictures of Bill Clinton all over the place with young women in a hot tub, mystery women sitting on his lap in Jeffrey Epstein's plane, swimming in a pool with a woman that looks pretty naked to me, Ghislaine Maxwell and somebody else. I think he has some explaining to do, considering so many people wanted Donald Trump to answer, no?
You're exactly right. The American people are interested in this. They want to know the truth. We're trying to provide the truth on the Oversight Committee. This subpoena.
And so here you have a little bit of the actual the hearing today in Congress.
Now, okay. Yeah, I know. That's right. All right, the committee will please come to order. A quorum is present. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 5B and House Rule 11, Clause 2, the chair may postpone further proceedings today on the question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered. The committee will continue to use the electronic system for recorded votes on amendments and passage of the bills before the committee. Of course, should any technical issues arise, which I do not anticipate, we will immediately transition to traditional roll call votes. Any procedural or motion-related votes during today's markup will be dispensed with by a traditional roll call vote. Now, pursuant to notice, I call up a report containing a resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find former President William J. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a duly issued subpoena issued by this committee. The clerk will report the report, which has been distributed in advance.
A report containing a House resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find former President William J. Clinton in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a duly issued subpoena issued by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform.
I ask unanimous consent that the report be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. The chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will please report the amendment.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to the contempt report is offered by Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read and the substitute will be considered in original text for the purposes of further amendment. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for a statement on the report. Today, the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform meets to advance 2 resolutions recommending that the House of Representatives find former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress.
Number one, this is not about embarrassing anybody. It's not about politics. If President Trump had the financial relationship, the donors, the donations, the money. Why did Jeffrey Epps give money to Democrats, to Bill and Hillary, to all these Democrats? Why? To John Kerry. Why did he give money? Why did he give money to Democrats and the Democratic National Committee while he was living in South Florida and while he was living in New York? Could it be for political protection? Why would you give $139,000 over the course of, 10, 15 years to Democrats? Maybe if Jeffrey F. lived in areas of the country that were run by Democratic Party politicians. I mean, even Hakeem Jeffries' campaign reached out to Jeffrey Epps. Larry Summers had to resign. Stacey Plaskett, the congresswoman was literally texting him real time. I mean, you can't even make it up. And then Jamie Raskin said, oh, he's a constituent. Yeah, he had an island in the Virgin Islands. I mean, do you really want to go there, Congressman? It's unbelievable. They have the audacity to say that Jeffrey Epps was a constituent of Democrats. Yeah, I guess you could say that. There was an island where criminality and monstrous, heinous things took place. Yeah, I guess he's a Democratic constituent, if you want to really call it that.
For refusing to comply with duly issued subpoenas. The committee does not take this action lightly, but subpoenas are not mere suggestions. They carry the force of law and require compliance. Former President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were legally required to appear for depositions before this committee. They refused. As Democrat Ranking Member Garcia stated, and I quote, defying a congressional subpoena is highly illegal, end quote. He also stated, and I quote, no one is above the law. Actions have consequences. 6 months ago, Republicans and Democrats on the House Oversight Committee.
So all they've been saying for the past 10 years is no one is above the law as they went after Trump. And then when they committed crimes, suddenly they don't use that phrase anymore. And they know that defying a congressional subpoena is illegal because they sent Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro to prison. And so how the Clintons get out of this, I don't know. But once the House of Representatives, I mean, this is happening like in slow motion for media. They don't see that Bill and Hillary are about to get indicted.
Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee unanimously approved deposition subpoenas for the Clintons by voice vote as part of our investigation into the federal government's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell criminal cases. More than 5 months ago, I issued those bipartisan subpoenas. The Clintons' testimony is critical to understanding Epstein's sex trafficking network and the ways he sought to curry favor and influence to shield himself from scrutiny. Their testimony may also inform how Congress can strengthen laws to better combat human trafficking. Since issuing the subpoenas, this committee has acted in good faith. We've offered flexibility on scheduling. The response we received was not cooperation, but defiance.
By the way, the rebuttal from Democrats, why don't you continue to negotiate with them? Did Steve Bannon get an ability to negotiate? Did Peter Navarro? And they're like, Jim Jordan had to testify. Jim Jordan was a member of Congress, and the Unselect Committee was withholding exculpatory evidence and likely deleting and destroying evidence. That's why they were preemptively pardoned. So, night and day, completely different. But let's continue.
Marked by repeated delays, excuses, and obstruction. The Clintons claim they have been treated unfairly because this committee accepted written statements under penalty of perjury from former U.S. Attorneys General Holder, Lynch, Sessions, and Garland, as well as former FBI Director Comey. Those written statements were accepted because none of those officials recalled information relevant to the Epstein investigation, nor did they have personal relationships with Epstein. By contrast, the committee required in-person testimony from former U.S. Attorney General Barr and former U.S. Secretary of Labor and U.S. Attorney Acosta, both Republicans, because they possessed information directly relevant to the investigation. The Clintons are in a fundamentally different category. They had documented relationships with Epstein and Maxwell, evidenced by numerous photographs, flight log records, wedding invitations, and other materials. Some of these photos can be seen here.
Could you imagine if Donald Trump was in those photos? Could you imagine? There's no criminal activity in the photos, but could you imagine?
We repeatedly informed the Clintons' attorney that written statements would not be accepted. The subpoenas required depositions. Federal courts have consistently held that witnesses may not impose their own conditions upon the manner of congressional inquiry. Yet the Clintons attempted to do exactly that, submitting brief, bulleted written statements that are neither comprehensive nor responsive to the committee's many unanswered questions. No witness, not a former president or a private citizen, may willfully defy a duly issued congressional subpoena without consequence. But that is what the Clintons did, and that is why we are here today. I would expect bipartisan support for enforcing those subpoenas by voting in favor of these resolutions. Unfortunately, it appears that Ranking Member Garcia has chosen to follow marching orders designed to distract from the issue at hand. I hope I'm wrong about this. Over the weekend, Ranking Member Garcia made clear that Democrats intend to divert attention from the Clintons by instead calling for Attorney General Bondi to be held in contempt. The difference is clear. Attorney General Bondi and the Department of Justice are producing documents. While the pace is slower than any of us would prefer and must speed up, I believe that much of the delay involves the Department of Justice trying to take care to redact victims' personal information. By contrast, the Clintons have flatly refused to appear at all, despite repeated warnings that the committee would move forward with contempt proceedings. Today, the Clintons must be held accountable for their actions, and Democrats must support these measures or they will be exposed as hypocrites. We must do what is necessary to uphold Congress's investigative authority, which is imperative to the legislative process. And we are doing so to demonstrate to the American people that justice is applied equally to everyone, regardless of position, pedigree, or prestige. I urge my colleagues to support this contempt report. I now yield to Ranking Member Garcia for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just make one thing clear.
So, this is very interesting. It's very interesting that the Clintons are now facing, they're not going to testify. They can get indicted, go to prison for 3 months, and Hillary will run again for president. People have disparaged me for saying Hillary Clinton will run no matter what. I don't know why anyone would try to demean me or try to, or would find that statement bizarre or outlandish. Hillary Clinton could actually be in prison and win the nomination, and she would still get the 70+ million that media and Jimmy Kimmel and, what's his name, George Clooney, and all of the Ellen DeGeneres, all the celebrities, Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, The Guardian, BBC, they would all say that Clinton in prison for contempt of Congress is infinitely better than J.D. Vance. So it don't matter. They don't care. So number one, they don't care about getting indicted. Number two, they very likely don't want to talk about Jeffrey Epps because he was a Democratic donor. And perhaps they were associated with the plane and the island and all of that. Possibly. Okay? So they don't want to talk about that, and media will not find that suspicious in the least bit. So Democrats govern through media, they govern through peer pressure, and they govern through lies by omission in a media that is an extension of the Democratic Party, an echo chamber. So media will tell the truth. CNN tells the truth, but only part of the truth. It's called lie by omission, and they will show you only what's good for the Democratic Party and everything that could possibly be bad for Trump. Or they will foment suspicion, skepticism when it comes to Trump, and they will pontificate about the sanctity of Democrats. So with this, they'll say that Trump is an authoritarian going after his political rivals and that the Clintons are innocent. But let's continue. This is a great exchange.
To the ranking member, Mr. Garcia.
Thank Thank you, Congressman Lynch. Mr. Comer, I just want to be just pretty clear about two things, and one particularly something that you said. Let me just start by saying that you noted in your comments that your concern and your biggest concern was the issue of the transcript. And I want to just go back really quick because you and I share respect for subpoenas. Mm-hmm. You and I share that we want the former president to answer questions. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. And so does every other member of this committee. We want the former president to answer questions of this committee. And we want not just the former president, but everyone to follow subpoenas of this committee. So let's agree on that. But to be clear,
let's agree on that, and let's then completely alter our value system for the Clintons.
President Clinton, the former president, has submitted a signed declaration. He's offered to sit with you and me.
Bannon and Navarro could have done that, offered a signed declaration, offered to sit with... They went to prison. They went to the big house. They went to the slammer. But, they didn't get that offer for, that negotiate. They weren't able to negotiate. Why not?
And answer questions. He's offered to have staff in the room to transcribe and be there while those questions are being answered. And his request was to do it in a dignified way. Your concern, as you brought up in your last comments, was that he was unwilling to do a recorded transcript. That's actually also not true. And to be clear, there's been public reporting.
They didn't show up. You don't get to, as a citizen of this country, if you have to deal with Congress, a congressional subpoena, you do not get to dictate the terms, nor do you have the ability to alter any requests, in terms of testifying before Congress. I mean, when was the last time this type of mentality, when was the last time Republicans or Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro when was the last, they already sent Navarro and Bannon to prison. I mean, they already sent two people to prison. What more do they want? I mean, the precedent is already there. My God.
Including in articles that came out over the weekend, that they have not ruled out a recorded transcript. I want to ask.
It's not for them to rule in or out anything. There's a time frame that they were already negotiating for 5 months.
The president questions. Chairman Comer, I want to ask President Clinton questions. Don't you?
That's why we're here.
I want to ask President Clinton questions and a recorded transcript and with our members of our staff. Would you like to do that also?
May I make a comment on the transcript? They have not agreed to a transcript. Staff notes are not equivalent.
They've actually made public reporting.
So they're wanting me to make note. They said, okay, Comer can take notes, but they've called us all liars, and how the Clintons have gone on offense, and look, they don't get to make the rules. We make the rules.
Can I have the rest of my time back?
Yeah. Go
okay.
ahead.
Thank you. I want to be clear because this is an email actually that from the Clinton lawyers.
They wanted Comer to take notes so then they could say he didn't remember what he was talking about, or that his notes were wrong.
You have this actually. To be clear, at no point were we opposed to the creation of a record of the interview, which is why we offered to allow the note takers previously. They go on. You have this email.
They didn't want an audio or video. They wanted note taking because then they could say that Comer and others didn't remember or their notes are not accurate.
No, sir. So I guess my question to you is: do you want to sit down and ask President Clinton questions? Actually, can I have my time back?
Well, the ranking member.
We'll recognize Garcia, then Mr. Donald will be next. So
thank you. So my question to you, Mr. Comer, again, is: if we want to actually ask questions of President Clinton, of which those of us in the minority want to do, then let's get him in. Let's negotiate a recorded transcription of that interview to further our investigation. I thank you for the yield, Mr. Lynch.
Time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Donalds.
Chairman, point of clarification. Both President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were subpoenaed by this committee to come in for a transcribed interview. Is that correct?
That's the sound of an American oil company.
Secretary Clinton were subpoenaed by this committee to come in for a transcribed interview. Is that correct?
Donalds.
Congressman Donalds is absolutely brilliant. Check this out.
Chairman, point of clarification. Both President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were subpoenaed by this committee to come in for a transcribed interview. Is that correct?
For a deposition.
Excuse me, for a deposition. Chairman, I've been in these closed depositions a number of times in my time being on the Oversight Committee. I fail to see what President Clinton's talking about with respect to a dignified manner. Every time I've been involved in any of these conversations, even when it was former President Biden's son came in for one of those, and I'm not trying to bring up all the Hunter stuff. It's just a point I'm making. I think everybody just take the temperature down, relax. Even those the closed door depositions have always been held in a dignified manner. Members have had questions outside of questions from committee staff, but members on both sides of the aisle had an ability to answer those questions. Those interviews are recorded. The transcripts of those interviews are provided to the public. I fail to see what special accommodations President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were looking for. Chairman, can you help me understand this? Or even a ranking member, I want to.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Hillary Clinton had top secret intelligence on private servers. If Trump, and then the Atlantic, ooh, Hex FM signal. Clinton had actual servers. Nobody cares, apparently, but still. Actual servers siphoning classified data from secure government networks. It's literally impossible to do from a cybersecurity perspective. But they said they called themselves the adults in the room, Democrats. They're still pontificating and preaching about everything. Can you imagine if Trump had private servers? They would say that Trump was selling nuclear launch codes to you know who, to the Ruskies. They would literally accuse Trump of that. But Clinton had servers for 4 years, and somehow, some way, classified data and top secret intelligence were being siphoned onto from secure government locations onto Clinton's servers, and Comey, Inspector Clouseau, couldn't find intent. Inherent in that is the intent to obviously hide or delete information. Then her lawyers deleted half of her emails. Her first 3 months of emails are missing, according to Comey, and then nobody cares. It's about tribalism. It is about the pure attainment of power, political power. That's it. It's never been about what's good for the country. Media is an extension of the Democratic Party. If media does not, even to this day, 24/7, prop up the Democratic Party, they don't really win at all. They don't even win in Congress, congressional seats. They don't win. Without Jimmy Kimmel, without media, without Hollywood, they're 20, 30, 40 seats down in Congress, as opposed to like 5 seats now. Because even David Plouffe in the New York Times said there's no chance in the Electoral College for 28 at this moment. And J.D. Vance will easily defeat in a landslide anyone Democrats have.
I'm really trying to understand. I'm not trying to make a point. We do too much of that here. I'm trying to understand, because if we're holding a new meeting to replace what the committee already requested, my question is why?
Mr. Garcia is willing to answer the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Donalds. I appreciate the question. Look, I think the committee first, I'm not here to defend the Clintons, to be clear. That's their job.
Very likely he's there to defend the Clintons.
To negotiate with the committee, and in this case, you have the majority. Their job is to negotiate with the majority on coming in for a binding subpoena. To be clear,
they already negotiated. It's been 5 months. They just want to negotiate forever. So then somehow, some way, they can slither and circumvent it. It just, nobody is better than Bill and Hillary, especially Hillary. She's better than Bill. Nobody. And nobody on the planet is better at Hillary than Bill and Hillary at circumventing justice or circumventing legal repercussions. Circumventing indictments. People could say, well, Trump did. These were completely fabricated, nonsensical, absurd allegations. Trump tried to foment a rebellion with a speech. Not Trump. He worked with the Russians. It was completely fabricated. They literally purchased this. That's another thing. The Steele dossier. We can go on. Look. You can go from the Oval Office and Monica Lewinsky to Clinton's servers, to the Steele dossier, to Whitewater, to a whole bunch of other allegations. They are brilliant. Nobody is better than the Clintons at circumventing legal consequences. Nobody. And it's not like with Trump, they made things up. He was convicted on something that nobody could be convicted on, which was campaign finance allegations that literally the Federal Election Commission dropped. The FEC dropped the case, and still New York, as a state which had no right to indict Trump on FEC crimes, the FEC and DOJ dropped the case, and that'll be overturned by the Supreme Court. But everything, the Colorado State Supreme Court tried to kick Trump off the ballot. The Supreme Court unanimously overturned the Colorado State Supreme Court. The people on the Colorado State Supreme Court are likely brilliant, highly educated, successful, intelligent people. They probably have amazing intelligence. Maybe they lack wisdom because they were overturned by the Supreme Court unanimously. Even the liberal justices said, yeah, no. And so media creates this narrative. It influences judges. Media has protected Bill and Hillary forever. And like I said, Hillary Clinton, if she wants to, will become nominee. And maybe the Democrats with Biden, they said, oh my God, we can catapult Biden in 2020. Maybe the Democrat, they don't even have functioning primaries. Biden won his primary. They kicked him out after he won. It's like no good deed goes unpunished. He literally won. And then they said, Harris will usurp him. How on earth do you even have primaries? Just pick somebody and just say we picked the person. Why even have a primary? But anyway, let's continue. And then the DNC emails, Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigned. They cheated Bernie Sanders. Nobody on the planet still cares about that but me.
But I'll also note that this committee has historically made accommodations for a variety of folks. In fact, I think it is a bit hypocritical.
Not Steve Bannon, not Peter Navarro.
That when this very subpoena for the Clintons were actually made, I believe there were an additional 5 to 6 other subpoenas that were issued to numerous other members of former administrations, attorney generals, and so forth. Every one of those other subpoenas, I think maybe with the exception of one, were given special accommodations. In fact, they were actually allowed to just send their responses in writing. Is that correct, Mr. Comer?
That is. May I respond to that?
Yes, in just one second. And so accommodations are made. And so while every other...
The Clintons don't even want to respond in writing. You think they want to respond in writing? They don't want to respond at all. They're not testifying. There's practically zero chance that Bill or Hillary will testify because then they'll be asked about Russiagate. Hillary will be asked about servers and Russiagate. There's zero chance they want to testify. They don't even care. Like, I get it. Nobody thinks they'll ever be indicted. Nobody thinks they'll be. At the end of the day, they probably don't even mind an indictment. They probably don't even care about going to prison. It might, like, in their minds, they might be like, hey, you know what? When Trump was indicted, why not us?
Other folks in that group were given special accommodations. That's been typically the case. And I'll finally say just this. Like you, I want to have President Clinton answer questions. I think they are trying to negotiate that.
No, That's not true. He is defending the Clintons because they're Democrats. And they saved the Democratic Party from Jimmy Carter, which is basically 12 years president. Okay, why are the Clintons so powerful, popular within the Democratic Party? Why? Has anybody ever asked that? It's because of Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, after he lost to Reagan, it was 8 years of President Reagan and then 8 years of Herbert Walker. 4 years of Herbert Walker. 12 years until Bill Clinton saved the Democratic Party. That was 12 years. You're probably going to get another 12 years. 4 years and then 8 years of Vance, and then, or maybe even 16 years, then 4 years of Rubio.
That with the majority, and they have been clear that it being transcribed is not an issue. They've not ruled that out. And so let's negotiate with the Clintons and let's get them to answer our questions.
Chairman, since I guess we're on my time, and by the way, ranking member, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Chairman, you were mentioning you were going to inject your commentary with respect to special accommodations that have been made for previous witnesses. I don't know if you want to expound on what the ranking member said or not.
I would love to. So, first of all, you talk about ongoing negotiations. We have been negotiating for 5 months. This is clearly a stall tactic, hoping that the time clock runs out and the House flips and that you all let them off the hook. But secondly, you mentioned, and I mentioned this in my open statement, there were names on that initial list with the Summerlee motion and the Scott Perry amendment. Attorney General Holder, Lynch, Sessions, and Garland, as well as Comey, they all complied and had written statements under the penalty of perjury that they had no knowledge of anything with Epstein, that they weren't directly involved in the investigation and, basically had no personal relationship. I think we would all agree the Clintons had a personal relationship with both Epstein and Maxwell. It's from the evidence that we've received thus far from the estate and all the other documents that we have thus far, it appears that Jeffrey Epstein visited the Clinton White House 17 times while he was president. And then post-presidency, it appears that Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's plane at least 27 times. So there's a huge difference between the knowledge.
Could you imagine if Donald Trump flew on that plane 27 times? Allegedly. Okay, Bill Clinton allegedly did that. Okay, so could you imagine, though? They got one photo in a party between Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. That's all they had. That's all they had. If Democrats and media had anything incriminating with Trump, they would have leaked it. Trump is like the greatest menace that media and academia and Democrats and liberals and progressives and leftists and Europeans, or European leftists, and all the wonderful, morally superior, good, decent, wonderful left of center people have ever had, ever. He is like this dragon that they have to, God forbid. Well, they tried to take Butler, Pennsylvania. Okay. So, and still they lose to him, thank God. And thank God he survived. And he had a firefighter that lost his life that day. Zero investigative journalism by all the Pulitzer Prize winning publications. I wonder why. And it's like, it is just unbelievable how 27 times on a plane, allegedly, and 17 times on an island. But, oh, by the way, an island that he was a constituent of a Democrat, according to Jamie Raskin.
In relationship with the Clintons and Epstein and Maxwell versus the former attorneys general. And another note, I don't know if it was Mr. Bell or whoever said that we only are interested in Democrats. We grilled Bill Barr and Alex Acosta, and they are very Republicans. In fact, they were members of the Trump cabinet. Now, I've been on the Oversight Committee 9 years. We've had 4 other committee chairs. We've had since I've been here, we've had Jason Chaffetz, Trey Gowdy, Elijah Cummings, and Carolyn Maloney. I don't ever remember a time, and I could be wrong. If I am, I'm sure you all will correct me, but I don't remember a time when Carolyn Maloney or Elijah Cummings subpoenaed a high-ranking Democrat to come in for a grilling. So to imply that this is partisan, that is just simply not true. We've already had two very the former Attorney General of the United States under Trump and the former Labor Secretary and U.S. Attorney. So we've done that. And then one other thing with the Clintons, and I'll yield back. One of the arguments the Clintons made, Mr. Garcia, was that our subpoenas were unlawful. Do you agree that the subpoenas we issued the Clintons are unlawful?
I believe that all of our subpoenas that we have issued have been lawful, sir.
Okay.
Nice, Congressman Garcia. I respect that. Wow. So that is the foundation of their attorney's statements. Oh, these are unlawful. Like, you don't get to decide that.
Just any other member seek recognition?
Ms. Brown, sir.
Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's clear to me that the purpose of this meeting today is just to continue this committee's agenda of political theater, plain and simple. Democrats have been very clear, abundantly, repeatedly, and without room for ambiguity. We want to hear from anyone who has information about the Epstein crimes. And yet, when former President Clinton and former Secretary Clinton offered to cooperate with this committee to submit sworn statements, to provide what they know, to engage in good faith,
They have to show up to the testimony because they received money, and they can hide behind sworn statements. Hillary got $20,000 from Jeffrey Epps. Why? What did he want in return? That's the question. Chuck Schumer got $22,000. What did Jeffrey Epps want in return? Larry Summers had to step down. Plaskett, Congresswoman, almost got censured by Congress for text messages real time. Jeffrey Epps gave $139,000 to Democrats. Okay, $139,000 in 14 years. Only 18 to Republicans, and they're not Trump Republicans. So that's the issue. That's exactly why. Okay. And they had 5 months. How long can you negotiate with somebody? 5 months is a long time.
These minutes, here's the original motion from the Democrats. Move that the subcommittee issue a subpoena. Listen carefully, you alleged journalist and you, the beloved American citizenry that's paying attention to this. Move that the subcommittee issue a subpoena to the Department of Justice for the full, complete, unredacted Epstein files to be delivered concurrently to the majority and minority of the Subcommittee on Federal Law Enforcement of the Committee of Oversight and Government Reform. That's it. That was the motion presented by the Democrats. That motion immediately struck me as very poorly written because it had no recognition of recognizing and adhering to the existing long-standing criminal justice procedure designed to protect the innocent.
And that's why Larry Summers resigned from all the different boards that he was on. A Democrat, a very, a Harvard professor, and a part of Clinton's cabinet. Okay, that's one of the reasons, the main reason pretty much, why President Trump didn't want to immediately release everything unredacted. Democrats know that they can't, they know that that any legal or ethical release of files of a Democratic donor, there will be redactions. So you don't have like 20 or 30 Democrats like Larry Summers resigning. Because I don't see any Trump Republicans resigning. I don't know how many Republicans, I don't know how many conservative Republicans or Trump Republicans resigned because of, emails and text messages and all this stuff to Jeffrey Epps. But let's continue.
It had no timeline. There was no timeline mandated in their own motion that would force the DOJ to comply with said timeline. There was no mandate for a particular percentage of release. There was no prohibition for actions in performance of compliance with their motion, which would become a subpoena from the Oversight Committee. It was not even the identification of Epstein. Just said Epstein files. Epstein who? You think the DOJ has not prosecuted more than one Epstein in the history of the DOJ? It was very poorly written. So, Republicans, noting that there were a lot of people missing from this, if we were going to do this, allow it to move, there were a lot of people missing. So Mr. Perry introduced, I remind my colleagues that this is my time. You recognize the decorum of this Oversight Committee. Perhaps you'll be recognized to speak. Mr. Perry introduced a motion to amend the motion to subpoena by the amendments to include William Jefferson Clinton, imagine that, use the whole name, and Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton, amongst others. And of everybody on Scott Perry's list, the most defiant has been the Clintons, and the Oversight Committee has been very patient. I submit for the record, unanimous consent, I ask Mr. Chairman, the actual subpoena produced on August the 5th at a hearing on July the 23rd. The subpoena was produced on August the 5th.
Without objections ordered.
Everyone has essentially complied to the wishes of the committee. Who's in control? We are. With a majority, we determine. The most defiant has been the Clintons. That's why we're here today. Back in July, after Scott Perry introduced an amendment to the Democrats' motion expanding the list to include the Clintons and others, including Republicans, Ms. Mace introduced an amendment to the motion to subpoena, saying, I move to amend Ms. Lee's motion to include the redacting of names of victims and any personally identifiable information of said victims and any possible child sexual abuse materials. And the subpoena itself, and I'm closing, Mr. Chair, the subpoena itself stated that the DOJ is to provide all the material requested and recognizing redactions required by law.
Proline, hello. Proline Pictures, thank you for watching for so long. Greatly appreciated. Yes. The Golden Moo will eventually, I think the indictments will be imminent. It's been 10 years that Rome wasn't built in a day, but I really appreciate Proline. Thank you so very much. Greatly appreciated. Thanks for the kind words, and thank you for watching for so long. Greatly, greatly appreciated.
So you're talking about 1 million documents. It takes time to redact 1 million documents.
It's happening, people. It's happening in slow motion to media, but I've been talking about this for years and years and years.
Capitol Hill, the House Oversight Committee has voted to hold former President Bill Clinton and his wife
former First Lady Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress. Several Democrats on the committee went along with Republicans on those resolutions. The Clintons are refusing to give depositions concerning the investigation into the late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. We get details tonight from Chief Congressional Correspondent Chad Pergram.
Two extraordinary votes as the House Oversight Committee voted to hold the former President and Secretary of State in contempt of Congress.
Subpoenas are not mere suggestions. He's not above the law.
Massachusetts Democrat Ayanna Pressley was one of 9 Democrats who voted for contempt.
I just focused on the survivors. We want to hear from anyone that has information.
God bless this woman and every Democrat that stood had integrity. I mean, that's beautiful. I think that's an amazing thing.
That should not be limited to party lines.
Some Democrats predict that potentially prosecuting a former president will backfire.
If we launch criminal contempt proceedings, we will not hear from the Clintons. That is a fact. They will be tied up in court.
They'll be indicted, like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. And it's like nobody should have to negotiate with people who have direct knowledge of heinous crimes, potentially direct knowledge, possibly direct knowledge, and then say, well, no, we can't hold them in contempt because then they'll be stuck with legal proceedings. It's like, what?
The Clintons ducked multiple depositions as part of the Epstein probe, but Comer believes they can't skip out forever.
I think the Clintons probably are thinking more about how they can get out of this today than they were.
Mike Johnson has already stated that he's going to hold a contempt vote. That is the last step before the Department of Justice issues an indictment. That's what happened to Peter Navarro, and that's what happened to Steve Bannon. Contempt of Congress, House floor vote, then it goes to the Department of Justice, then it goes to a grand jury, then it goes to, and how you can, I mean, the grand jury, this is a congressional subpoena, a bipartisan vote for testimony, ignored, and then you get a floor vote, contempt by the House of Representatives, congressional contempt of Congress. There's zero way that even a DC jury would ignore indictment.
For the last 5 months, because the court of public opinion is not on the Clinton side.
The former president often traveled with Jeffrey Epstein, appearing with him in pictures. Democrats claim Republicans focused on the Clintons to divert attention from releasing all Epstein documents.
It's about protecting.
The House Oversight voted for contempt of Congress. Now every person in Congress in the House has to vote. So this committee voted for contempt of Congress. They send it to the House, to Mike Johnson, for everyone, all 435 Congress people to vote on.
One man, Donald J. Trump.
Some Democrats believe the committee should target someone else.
The only person who should be held in contempt right now is Pam Bondi. We need to be releasing these files.
Why? Where would Ro Khanna? I respect him, but where was he 4 years ago talking about this? All during Biden's administration, the past 8 years. Only when Trump comes, then releasing unredacted files, you get more people like Larry Summers resigning.
But at least one Democrat casts a broader net.
We should hold everybody in contempt that had anything to do to cover this up.
Now the full House.
I believe she voted against. I believe she voted against. She voted for. I believe she voted to hold both Hillary and Bill in contempt. So she has my respect for that.
Votes on contempt for the Clintons next month. Comer says the committee interviews Ghislaine Maxwell virtually in early February. Brett?
And Jack, quickly, the House and Senate have a lot to do, but we have this massive snowstorm coming our way.
Yeah, we're hearing some chatter that the House might try to wrap up everything tomorrow. They're supposed to be in Friday, maybe get people out of town by Friday. They have to vote on spending bills. And then the question is, does the Senate maybe give back some time early next week because members can't get into town? The government funding deadline is January 30th.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's happening. The contempt vote will take place. Mike Johnson's going to hold a contempt vote. You better believe President Trump is calling Mike Johnson on his cell phone and saying, let's have the most beautiful contempt vote ever. Or basically like, hey, are you busy next week? So anyway, hit subscribe. This is happening, ladies and gentlemen. It goes to the floor. Then it goes to the DOJ. I don't think people really understand this. I just don't think people understand. But that's Bannon and okay. Please, I need to know how on earth any Democrat or any person out there is okay with Bannon serving time and Peter Navarro serving prison time, but not the Clintons, even though they did the exact same thing. There's no precedent for like Trump's conviction for hush money. There is a precedent. It was like literally a couple years back. Not even like last year, or no, 2 years ago. No, last year. He was 24. He served prison sentence. Anyway, hit subscribe. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now.